Welcome, Dearest. This is Plots and Reviews, the space to discuss all things plot and get your weekly dose of stories. If you're new, hi, I'm Bree, your host. Keep in mind that you're welcome to share your views in the comments and remember to check for spoiler tags. Without further ado, let's get started. Today we'll be going over how I rate books, or my rating rationale. I originally posted my rationale on February 28th, 2021, but now that it's been over a year and I have some more concrete examples, I wanted to revisit it and discuss some books that fall into each category. I'd like to preface this by stating that my views and reviews are never an attack on the author. They are merely a reflection of my personal thoughts on the books based on my own existence and experiences. I refuse to lie about my views on a book, and I try to make my position as clear as possible because I know no two people read the exact same story. However, just because I may not like a book, it does not mean that you or someone else won't fall in love with it. And I really need to make this clear. So, although I may give a particular point of view, I still encourage persons to check out the book if there is anything there that sounds interesting to you. With that in mind, let's start at the bottom with what makes a 1 out of 5 read for me. I'll use about 3 books to describe each level of my ratings, and I may give a little insight into why a particular title falls into that category. A 1 out of 5 for me is a could not finish. This means I just couldn't do it to myself, but congrats on writing a book. 3 books that fall into this are Addie, LaRue, Whirl Ender, and Rose-Petals-Graves. The most interesting book within this category for me is Addie, LaRue because it is such a polarizing book. I know there are several persons who really enjoyed it, but my difficulty with it was the fact that here was someone making consistently poor, horrible choices and expecting us, the reader, the person listening to her story, to feel bad for her, to feel sorry for her. And I just couldn't. I don't care, Addie. I don't care that you decided that you weren't going to listen to all of the old villagers. I don't care that you decided that you were going to go and invoke this random demon creature at night when you should only be looking at the day gods. I don't care. I cannot care about you. Also, her randomly walking around New York City doing, stealing stuff and finding stuff to eat. The thing about this book is that it's not like there isn't bad writing. The writing itself is technically good, but Addie is a non-entity for me. A 2 to 2.9 out of 5 means that it was not quite there. I barely managed to finish it, and it was a struggle. There were many ways my existence believed or still believes that the whole experience, the experience of reading this book, could have been better. A few books that fall into this category are The Mirror King, To Marry an Earl, and Ash Princess. I remember very little about To Marry an Earl except that there was an Earl that needed someone to marry him. Ash Princess traumatized me deep to my core because of several things. Descriptions of dark skin was just trash. The female was useless. Her name traumatizes me, but I don't remember what her name is. That's the level of trauma I'm dealing with that book. And The Mirror King was just a disappointment because the author had created this very interesting character that had so much potential, could have added so much to the story, and he was simply not used at all properly. So that was a no. 3 to 3.9 out of 5 means that it was readable. The writing may not have been as fluid, the characters may have been a tad bland or unlikable, silly tropes may have been swimming around too much in the plot, or the combination may just not have been that appealing, but it can still be read and enjoyed. A few examples here are Revenge, Bad Gods, The Woman Next Door, and The Moonfire Bride. Revenge and Bad Gods are really meh, like they're okay, but there's nothing there that I found so dynamic or interesting to like completely capture my attention. Bad Gods had a lot of potential. The story itself was interesting, the world created was interesting, but I don't know, it didn't push itself to that point for me. The Moonfire Bride, that was a disappointment. And whenever I am disappointed, if a book is trending at like a 4.5 or 4.3, and within the story, the author decides to fall back on like terrible tropes just to throw it in there instead of like pushing for something original, immediately that book drops. And that's what happened with Moonfire Bride. Excellent premise, great setup. It was going so well. I loved the writing. I thought that the characters were interesting. And then it's like the author gave up. Just gave up. So that was a no. A 4 to a 4.7 means that it was good, great. In other words, the story was overall engaging and fluidly written, but it may have suffered from a few pitfalls with its characters, overall plot, conflicts, being too predictable, or a combination of these and a sprinkle of unknown reason. And again, we have that sprinkle of unknown reason. It's very important. Some books that fall into this category are The Cruel Prince, Pastel Pink, and Run from the Dead. All three of those are very interesting books, very interesting plots, very well thought out. But interestingly enough, all three to me had a female character, the female main character, that wasn't quite what I expected. I hoped that she would have been better given the circumstances, but she wasn't, and that was a disappointment to me. So this is actually my favorite rating, and it's the 4.8 to 4.9 out of 5. And this is just me being petty, but like not mean petty, just petty. It means that part of me really considered giving the book a 5, but because I thought there was something or some things that could have been better, stronger, deeper, I couldn't bring myself to give it a 5. In essence, I wanted to give it a 5, but I had to think about it. A few books that fall into this category are The Unraveling, If She Says Yes, Dogs of Devtown, Noor, and The Beholden. And all of these books are very interesting. They're amazing. You have a combination of different setups. They're unique. You have worlds that are amazingly created. The books are well written. They're fluid. But there's just that little je ne sais quoi, that little something that I was like, this cannot be a 5. Why am I thinking about it? And unfortunately, they weren't 5s. But they were very close to being 5s. And these are the books I generally don't like to round up anywhere. But these are books that I consider rounding up to 5s. Just because my reasoning was very particular to myself, not in any way to the quality, the amazingness that I originally found of the book. Finally, we have a 5 out of 5, which was an ultimately fulfilling experience. This means I did not have to ask myself what to rate this book. The moment I finished it, I was like, this book is a 5 out of 5. Reading perfection. There are no silly tropes, excellent writing, interesting characters, no idiotic women, generous and engaging world building, well thought out and fulfilling plot, and it was an overall joy to read. The experience was great for me. A few books that fall into this category are Devon and Kris Plan a Wedding, The Book of Maggor Thoom, Remote Control, and All Systems Red. I absolutely loved each one of these. Devon and Kris Plan a Wedding, amazing. I was crying, I was laughing. I felt like a connection there. It was excellent. The Book of Maggor Thoom, hilarious, but not for everyone. Definitely not for everyone. It could be sensitive. but it is such clever comedy, and it's a graphic novel. I loved it. Remote Control is a beautiful story for me. Someone I discussed it with recently mentioned that it's a tad unrealistic, but it is African futurism, so unrealistic futurism. But the story in itself is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, and again, I felt deeply connected to the main character. And finally, All Systems Red is a novella. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant, absolutely. Like, you have this murder bot that decides that it wants to try something new with its life, but everything about it, how it's written, the character itself, that development of the character, it's so well done. It's an amazing book. I recommend. It's also science fiction. And those are basically the books. Yeah, those are them. If you have made it this far, I would love to hear how you go about rating your books and movies. Let me know if my rationale made sense to you and which description, if any, resonated the most with you. The comments are open to your views, so go right ahead. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for checking in. If you don't already, please consider subscribing to my channel for more bookish discussions and convos. It was a pleasure having you. Take care. Bye-bye.